Hi, my name is Tamara Deverell, and I'm the production designer on Nightmare Alley, which is up for an Oscar nomination in design. I think we're all storytellers. So I come from a place of reading the script. My father's a writer. It's really important to me to get the story and the characters right. So I'll read this script a couple of times. First, I'll read it and I'll try and not think about what my contribution ultimately will be. Just try and get the story and get the characters and really get a feel for them. And then I'll get into, for me, research is essential, especially when you're doing a period piece. So I'll get into a lot of research. And then there's sort of a second tier of research, especially working with somebody like Guillermo, where it's looking at paintings at different, we were looking at Hammershoy, a Danish painter. We were looking at Andrew Wyeth, an American painter. We were looking at Edward Hopper for color tones, Picasso, all kinds of different drawing from different points in art history, as well as architecture. So looking at Art Deco, looking at original whatever we could find of carnival imagery and carnival movies. We did nods to Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train in terms of our carnival entry way. This neon sort of entrance was a direct homage to Hitchcock. So we're looking at a lot of different things and I try to be selective with Guillermo and show him a curated version of my research and my references, and just sometimes it's just like a photograph from like the 1930s that evokes a certain feeling. Certainly Christina's World, which is this Wyeth painting, was our go-to essence of the burning shack on the hill that starts the film. And then I start to draw. I'm old school, so I still draw by hand, although now it's by hand on my iPad usually. So I always have to start with a plan. So I started with a plan of the carnival, some plans of Lilith's office, the sets, once logistically we figure out what we're building, the sets I knew we were building, I'll just start doing a plan. And then I'll give it to my team to start evolving and modeling. So, I obviously don't work alone. So I have a fantastic team of set designers and concept artists and graphic people who were like essential especially for the banners in the circus. And we did things like for the carnival banners, we actually bought some banners and brought them into the art department so we could look at the real deal of the Fred Johnson, who is like the Picasso of the banner carnival world. We could actually look at the quality of the paint, the how they were built. They had leather grommeted corners and that kind of thing. So we could really get the essence. Like I really wanted the carnival to be real. And I think that reality might it exists in all of our psyches, this old carnival world, whether you're from India or from, Paris, or, we've all had that in our childhoods. It's there, whether it's there from movies or from your actual memories. I think it's there. And I really wanted to evoke that with the carnival. I have worked with Guillermo a fair bit over the last 20 to 25 years. So I have an understanding of what he's looking for. Initially, our initial conversations are really just looking at a lot of research. And he said, watch the original movie from the 1940s and do read the book. And he told that to all the department heads, but then we sort of let go of that. We were wanting to make our own movie very much. So we didn't want to be beholden to the original source material too much. We talked a lot at the very beginning about just the logistics part of what it is we were going to build, the Art Deco styling of the second half of the movie, and of course the carnival for the first half. And it was a lot of research and a lot of just looking at images together. And then I started drawing just little plans of the carnival, and we talked about what the importance of the characters and the movement that he wanted through the carnival and the relationship he wanted between the key areas of the carnival. Yes, it is actually, the city was Buffalo, and we did actually shoot in Buffalo, New York, which was, very informative for me as a designer. Just going to the city and going there with Guillermo because it has so much great Art Deco, and it really assisted us in the look of that Art Deco, as well as some great Art Deco locations in Toronto and in Hamilton in Canada, where we shot most of the film. Um, the um, the balance of between the two worlds. I mean, there was a lot of very intentional use of geometry. We had a kind of a circle motif throughout the film that we first see in the Geek Pit and in the Fun House when Stan goes in. And to me, that was sort of encapsulating Stan's character, played by Bradley Cooper. And then we carried that theme, that intentional theme, through to the second half. And as luck would have it, many of our locations, and maybe this is why we were attracted to them, had that motif. So the Copacabana nightclub, for example, was this tremendously restored Art Deco venue in Toronto, and we shot there because it had that, because it was a circular room. And one of the things that we had to do is build a sort of a series of risers, like a wedding cake, to bring the actors up to the circle ceiling so Guillermo could capture that in a frame. That was sort of one of the design solutions to use that space. Yeah, so that was one theme. Thematically, also, there's a theme of alleys, I find, as of long spaces of alley-like spaces throughout the movie that go from the tent alley in the carnival, for example, to the train car, to him traveling through the trains at the end, to Lilith's office, which was a very long set that we purposely elongated to create this constant sort of looking through and down long lengths of set or locations. To be honest, I didn't want to be focused too much on making a film noir movie. And we talked about that early on with Guillermo and Dan Lauschton, our amazing cinematographer. And I was aware of it. And certainly for Dan, in the lighting, it was much more something that he was going to. And we, of course, in terms of our set decorator, Shane Hugh, and myself, tried to help him move towards a film noir lighting where possible. But in terms of my design, I looked at a lot of the film noir classics, and frankly, the sets are very rudimentary and very, very geometric and angular and harsh, and all about shadow and light. And that wasn't really something we were intentionally going for in the look of the design. Well, it's interesting you mentioned the eye motif, which also has to do with the circle motif. We certainly played that up in the Fun House, which was, I think some people think it was VFX, but it was all practically built. The circular barrel, the eye room with the big eyeball that moves, that was all handmade, just like they would make it in an actual carnival, which I think is why it reads so well for people. And in particular, the Funhouse was very much going into the nightmare and into Stan's inner self, his inner head, and the curved mirrors where he stops for a moment and pauses, and it says something about "Are you a sinner?" That whole theme of sin and the fall of man, which is a big Del Toro theme for me. It was encompassed in that Funhouse in a fun way. Like, it was dark and dripping and intentionally dark. There was a lot more scenery that we built, in fact, that you just don't see because it's so dark, which I'm used to working, I knew that going into it. But yeah, the eye thing, and then doing that crazy eye room. It was Guy Davis, who is Guillermo's longstanding concept artist that we work with. He came up with some of the, Guillermo's like, oh, let's do this crazy eye room. So Guy did some sketches, and then we breathed life into it. And, I was drawing eyes for days for these. We carved, 1,000 eyes to put in this eye room around this giant eye. It's an intense sort of craftsman kind of a movie about, it's really a movie about craftsmanship when you look at the design, because it is so handcrafted. And I think giving, when you see something like that, when you see something that's all hand sculpted and painted, I think that's very dreamlike, and it takes people into a place in their heads, because I think we're all part artists, where it reaches something in your brain that's just like, well, this is this weird manufactured Alice in Wonderland kind of world. The themes of showbiz, absolutely. I mean, we were, of course, playing that up in the Copacabana. There's a giant marquee shot that we did that didn't end up in the film, but you can see it in the trailer. So we were really going for like the neon, the big city lights, the showman in love with himself, basically Stan, our main character, shiny, like for the second half, shiny surfaces, just like, playing up that difference from Stan goes from his downtrodden carnival self to suddenly he's in the big city, the big lights, spotlights on him, shiny floors, shiny over the top sculpted pieces that we put around in the Copacabana. In the dressing room, just like we use satin wallpapers and gold finishes around on the furniture and on the carpets. And, we custom made all these posters of the stars of the day, so to speak. I mean, it's fun to play that up because it is about show business, but it's also about selfishness and greed and being a con man and all of those things. I think playing up the show business aspect of it was something very different for Guillermo. So, I think it was a lot of fun for him to do the showman, to do the pizzazz, and to let Bradley Cooper kind of be that, be the handsome leading man, and Cate Blanchett to be the femme fatale leading lady, who's also a con man in her own right. I mean, there's so many influences and so many things I was drawing from, both filmically. I was looking at some of the old Hollywood movies by Cedric Gibbons, who was doing those films in the 30s and the 40s, that had that Art Deco design, and they were always very theatrical back then. And so I wanted a bit of that theatricality, but I also drew from my own sort of my own stored memory and of things that I had seen. And one of my big influences that I showed Guillermo was this. There's just this little tiny office in the Brooklyn Museum in New York that I have been visiting for years, and tabled it away in the back of my brain. That's this Art Deco Parisian designed office that they transplanted into the museum, this one floor where they have different eras. So this is their Art Deco building room, and it's all wood and it's all lacquered, and it's got the lacquer panels, the wood, inlaid wood. So I took that and I showed Guillermo. I said, I feel like this is right for Lilith's office in particular. And he was yes. And so we explored the idea of wood and veneers and lacquer panels, with little nods to Frank Lloyd Wright into Lilith's office, which we wanted to be more warm and feminine and, shiny, glitzy in a way, but not like overly typical of the Art Deco that you see, which is like the Empire State Building and the Capitol Building in Los Angeles, and all those. I was looking at Hong Kong modern versions of Art Deco for Grindel's office with all the windows. So it was really just like, looking at things and pulling them aside and pulling them together. Every once in a while, Guillermo would send me something, and it would be like a bas relief from the Rockefeller Center. Like, let's do something like this in Grindel's. Let's make it powerful in his factory, or in his home, in his office, in his factory, which was built on stage. So, Art Deco is very, the continuity of Art Deco had a lot of arches and the circle shapes that we were going for anyway. So it really worked hand in hand with that historical era of architecture. Yes, certainly. I mean, it's interesting you say emerald tone because Louis Sakara, our costume designer, put her in some green tones that we thought would look really beautiful, a green suit that looked really beautiful in the office. So I did work closely with him to get the tone qualities right. And then Stan, as a character coming out of the carnival, I always felt like he was this amber nicotine. He's always still nicotine stained, even though he's in his fresh, new suits and crisp lines and stuff that again Lewis paid attention to. So we really, for me, Kate Blanchett, who's an amazing actress, and I really, was so inspired by her and what I knew her performance could be in that office to create the environment around her. It had a lot to do with not just tone but texture and shine. We had originally we were going to do a carpeted floor. We went to a shiny actual real marble floor because to replicate real marble is almost impossible. And there were so many scenes where they're on the floor, they're close to the floor, and we made that emerald kind of toned settee that becomes a key that was created. We designed and built that from scratch based on some references Shane View, our decorator, found. So that was a very emerald sort of moment. That was sort of a pivotal point in the set that they could go to, and the whole set in itself, it became so big that Guillermo could allow the actors to dance through it. So we were never they were able to move like a ballet almost. I mean, I think of it in terms of dance in a strange way. So the other thing in terms of the tone of that set in particular, Dan, when I watched it the second time, I was very aware of Dan's lighting, which really set a tone for each scene. Like as the mood changed, as the relationship evolved, the lighting evolved, and as it got darker and more frightening, and the relationship was going awry, he started lighting from the ceiling, and it became this more strangely dappled lighting, and it became a little more surreal in my mind. So there was a lot of that tone that Dan brought out in the lighting, with the set working to his favor, all carefully planned and collaborated towards that end. Well, the scale of the carnival was really established by the necessity that by the story and what we needed to have in the story, and B, by what we could acquire. Like we got a Ferris wheel that was one of the only real things in the carnival that we didn't build from the ground up, and a carousel that we again was a real 1920s carousel that we had to do a lot of work on, frankly. But getting some of those big pieces that kind of helped frame the carnival. So it did kind of do this evolution of size. Like it was sort of what we knew we were going to build the fun house. We knew we were going to build the geek pit, the tent. We knew we were going to have Clem have a tent off of that. We knew we had Xena. So we had to sort of arrange it around. And then I wanted to give Guillermo alleys in the carnival. So there was a lot of moving of the tents and the small tents and the small pieces to create that, and then the relationship of that to Xena's bungalow. So it kind of became a little city of its own. And then when we get to the bigger world of the city, again, like it's this theme of alleys that we were constantly looking for and creating. Alleys when they go, the Salvation Army alley where they drop the geek off, and creating that, and creating, which was a little bit of VFX, and creating outside the bus stop, which was part Toronto and part Buffalo, and VFX brought those elements beautifully together. It was always getting that long and narrow kind of feel that you're still in this twisted world of the carnival, even though you're in the city. in a weird way. There's the long alley that he runs through at the very end when he's injured, his ears shot off, that we found in Buffalo. It was just pretty much as is. We had to light it and we had to remove some modern elements, but we just fell in love with this under an actual train bridge, where we could record the actual sounds of the trains and timed it so we actually had the real trains going through. None of that was VFX. It's surprising how that just tonally fit with his earlier times running through the alleys in the carnival that we created.